Okay, so we start with today's section is the Kena, and we'll jump straight in. Kena in Sanskrit is the instrumental of Ka, who. So Kena is by who. So where it says by who, by who, by who, by who in the text in the Sanskrit would be Kena, da 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 Kena, da 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 Kena. That's a lovely melodic feel to it. So we'll just read the first khanda, the first section. By whom impelled, by whom compelled does the mind soar forth? Okay, so the mind is soaring forth into the world. Well, what's animating it? What's compelling it? What's behind it? What's its living force? In most Hindu philosophy, certainly in the Hindu philosophy, the mind is separate from consciousness. Unlike in the Greco-Christian tradition, many expressions of the Greco-Christian traditions, Plato, Aristotle, gets absorbed into Christianity by the great theologians Aquinas and Augustine. The soul is consciousness, but it's also thinking. So therefore, the qualities of the soul in Greco-Christian thought, generally put, obviously there's nuances and differences, is that the soul is that substance, the qualities of which are consciousness and mind. Not so in most Indian schools. In some, Nyaya would say that, thinking is a quality of the soul, but still the mind itself is a distinct entity. So by whom impelled, by whom compelled does the mind soar forth? What's animating the mind? What's the consciousness behind mind? By whom enjoined does the breath march on as the first? Right? What's behind the breath? That it's the first. It animates the body. By whom is the speech impelled, with which people speak? Same principle, right? What animates all this? And who is the God that joins the sight and hearing, right? God sort of, is it a Vedic, not in the sense of a Vedic God, but who is the Lord? I mean, what joins sight and hearing, right? Because we can see something, we can hear something at the same time. So what's uniting these two? Well, we can touch something at the same time. All of our senses can be operating at the same time. They're all different senses. So what's coordinating all of that? What joins these different external functions? Obviously, the answer is the Atman. That which is the hearing behind hearing. So we hear because we're conscious. Consciousness goes out through the organ of the ear and can hear, but the ear by itself cannot do anything. So it's the hearing behind hearing, the thinking behind thinking. The mind does the thinking in the sense of storing material and organizing material and sense data. But what is it that's conscious of that? The speech behind speech, the sight behind sight, right? The consciousness is not in the eyeball. The eyeball allows sight, but what causes the conscious? What allows one to be conscious of the objects of sight? It is also the breathing behind breathing. The minute the Atman goes, breathing's finished. Freed completely from these external functions, the wise become immortal. All those functions are mortal. All the sense organs die with the body. They are the body. The body is nothing other than organs, sense organs and internal organs. That's everything in the body is an organ of some form or fashion. So they are mortal, but freed from them. The wise, the ones who know the Atman, they become immortal when they depart from this world. Sight does not reach there. You can't see the Atman. Remember the metaphor of the banyan fruit? You could split open the seed. You can't see the life force. So sight doesn't reach there. Neither does thinking or speech. How can you describe it? You can say it's not this, not this, not this. Neti, neti, neti. But actually, we should have had some of those passages as part of this course. I don't know how they got left out of the selections. But there's passages in the Brihad and other couple of 2-3 places in the Upanishads which say na iti, which is not this, not this, not this, meaning the Atman is nothing that we perceive. It's not the table, it's not the chair, it's not green, it doesn't have any of these qualities that we perceive through our senses. So since you can't really describe it other than saying that it is, which means it's eternal, because something is always in a state of ising, always in a state of being, then that means it's eternal. And you can say it's consciousness itself. So somehow they got left out. But anyway, nati, we'll run into that probably in the Vedanta, when we get to Vedanta. So, sight doesn't reach there, neither does thinking or speech. We don't know. We can't perceive. How would one point it out? How are you going to point to it? Other than saying, well, it's the very source of consciousness itself. You can't point to it. It's far different from what's known. It's not like anything in this world, the Atman. It's further than the unknown. In one way, you can say it's further from everything that we know. So have we heard from men of old. The old sages have handed down this wisdom through the ages about the Atman, and still continue to do so. Right? These Upanishads are at least 2,500 years old, even by Indological dating estimates, and still the Vedanta traditions are alive and perpetuating these old teachings that have been handed down. Even the Upanishads themselves are speaking about sages of old, and the Upanishads are already old for us. So have we heard from men of old, who have explained it all to us, which one cannot express by speech. You can't describe it other than you can negate and say it's not this. You can say something very basic, such as it's sat, it's eternal, and it is consciousness, right? You can't express it by speech other than that, by which speech itself is expressed. But the very fact that we can say anything, speak, the very fact that we're alive is because of such that we can speak and engage in any kind of sensory activities because of the Atman, because we are conscious. Consciousness is the quality of the Atman. It's not a material quality in any of these traditions. Okay? Learn that alone is Brahman. That is what it is. It's that which allows everything else to be animate. And not what they here venerate. That's Brahman. Not what people venerate here. Wealth, right? Stuff, material things. That's not Brahman. These are just fleeting, temporary, ephemeral manifestations of matter, Prakriti, which one cannot grasp with one's mind. You can't grasp the Atman. The Atman can only grasp material things. It can grasp material things and from material things make inferences and engage in conceptual activity based on empirical perception, right? All our concepts in some form or fashion, you trace them back, they come back to empirical perceptions. So the mind can do that sort of thing, but you can't grasp the Atman. You can make an inference that there must be an Atman, but you can't grasp it. You can't know it. You can know about it through inference. And the inference is, well, consciousness must reside in a substance, and that substance cannot be material because no material substance has a quality of consciousness. And you can keep looking for it. You can say, well, one day we'll find it in some neuron. Well, fine, keep looking for it. But Yoga would say, Vedanta, Upanishads would say, you'll never find it. At some point, give up, and maybe turn back to what the old sages have been saying all along. And what have they been saying all along? Consciousness is not an epiphenomenon, a side effect, or a byproduct of any material entity. Right? If you're going to say it's a neuron, which neuron? If it's just one neuron, that's a very specific neuron that has the quality of consciousness, well, you might as well call it a soul then, because that's what the soul traditions are saying, that the soul is different from all other known entities, and it has a quality of consciousness. If you're going to say, well, it's not one neuron, but a combination of neuron, well, find them then, put them together. Is it a different combination for every living creature, for an ant, for a blade of grass, for everything that's alive? Why can't you find at least in a blade of grass then? If the human brain is too complex, we'll find that which animates a blade of grass, which causes a blade of grass to be alive. So if a scientist has a belief, remember it's a belief to say that life comes from a material entity, just as it's a belief to say that it comes from a non-material entity like an Atman, but they're both beliefs exactly the same in terms of they're based on faith, since science has not demonstrated that life comes from any combination of material entities. Yoga would say actually you can actually prove it, and when we read Patanjali Yoga Sutras, we'll see that. Patanjali will say yes, you can experience the Atman directly, personally. We'll get to that in the Yoga Sutras. But anyway, here can't be grasped with the mind. Okay, by which they say the mind itself is grasped. And the very fact that the mind can think is because there's life. There's consciousness animating it. There's consciousness behind the mind. And of course, most of these traditions are going to say consciousness is distinct from the mind. It can step back from the mind. It can be conscious of the mind. So the mind is an object. If it's an object, it's not the subject. Something else must be the subject of consciousness. So learn that alone is Brahman, and not what they here venerate. Same nice little refrain, right? We're chasing after these material things. But what good will they all do at the moment of death? Which one cannot see with one's sight. This is a repetition, typical Upanishads, remember, oral transmission. You repeat important points. It is not like a book where you can go back and remind yourself about something you might have forgotten. You hear it, and if you missed it, that's it. You have to wait till the teacher says it again, orally. So which one cannot see with one's sight, by which one sees the sight itself. Right? We perceive through vision, but we are conscious through vision. So consciousness is something distinct from that, working through the vision, the organs of vision, the organs of the ocular organs. Learn that alone is Brahman, and not what they here venerate. Okay, that's Brahman. That which animates everything, empowers everything, allows everything to be known, to be conscious. By dint of it, by the Atman's power of consciousness allows that power permeating through the sight, the organs of sight, the mind, the instruments of cognition, permeating all these instruments. They're all instruments, they're all organs, they're all indriyas. They're going to be called in Sankhya. So an instrument is not there for itself, it's there for something else, someone else. So that which animates allows these instruments to work, to do their task. That is the Atman. Which one cannot hear with one's hearing, by which hearing itself is heard. Same point. Learn that alone is Brahman, and not what they here venerate. Which one cannot breathe through breathing, by which breathing itself is drawn forth. Same point. We breathe because we're conscious and we're alive. So breathing itself is not the source of consciousness. It's just a symptom of consciousness. So learn that alone is Brahman, and not what they here venerate. I hope you enjoyed that. I think that's so beautiful, especially the first. Look at the first verse. Kena, by whom? The for, by whom, and who. So beautiful. Okay, so the Kena takes its name. The Upanishad takes its name from the first word, Kena. So I hope you enjoyed that. So now we move along to the Kaṭha Upanishad, and it has a lovely little story, just like Indra and Virochana, who went to the house of the Guru, and let's come back. Indra had to come back 4 times. We had to go 4 times. Each time he had to live for, what was it, 32 years? Spend 101 years or something there, 32 plus 32 plus 32 plus 5, 101 years to get knowledge of Brahman. Obviously it's a story, but it shows how Brahman is not for the frivolous, the quest for Brahman. It's not for the superficial, or is seeking some material thing, as was Virochana. But Indra, of course, could see the problems with all those material layers of consciousness, or expressions of consciousness, waking, dream, deep sleep. Okay, so now we have another lovely little story. And there is Ushan, Kaṭha, right? Start at the beginning. The son of Vajashravas. Once gave away all his possessions. So he had a son named Nachiketas, famous Nachiketas. Young as he was, faith took hold of him while the cows presented as sacrificial gifts were being led away. So his dad was giving away, probably some sacrifice, when he was giving away all his possessions, but also giving away his cows. So the son is looking at these cows, and he reflects, they've drunk all their water, eaten all their fodder. They've been milked dry. They're totally barren. Joyless are those worlds called, to which a man goes, who gives them as a gift. Okay? Kaṭha Upanishad. The verses are called Vali. So we're on the first Vali. So the son looks at the cows and goes, they're a bit mingy, those cows. A bit scrawny and skinny. You're supposed to give nice cows away at the sacrifice, and then you'll get to the celestial realm. The son says, well, my dad's giving away these ratty, skinny-looking cows. What kind of a celestial realm is he going to go to? Joyless are those worlds called, to which a man goes who gives them as a gift. He's not going to make it very far in the celestial realm with these scraggly, skinny, milkless cows. Okay? So he asked his father, Father, to whom will you give me? He repeated it for a second time. And again for a third time. His father yelled at him, I'll give you to death. Father has a slight parenting problem. The kids say, you know what kids are, repeat the same question. And the dad got annoyed and said, I'll give you to death. So, that's the setting of the story. So Nachiketa reflects, I go as the first of many, right? So everyone's died. I go as the first of many. I go as the middlemost of many. Right? What is it that Yama must do that he will do with me today? Yama is the god of death, the Pluto of the Roman traditions. So his dad just said, I'll give you to death. And when a Brahmin gives his word, when a Brahmin says something in these texts, it always comes about. So you can maybe sometimes modify it a little bit. A Brahmin's curse can be modified, but it can't be retracted. Can't be halted. So his dad is just he's going to give him to Yama, basically. He's basically killed him. So then a voice comes. Look ahead, see how they have gone, those who have gone before us, all the dead beings from human history. Look ahead, look how they've all gone. Look back, so will they go. Right? Look back, all these beings here, they'll also go. Those who will come after us. A mortal man ripens like grain, and like grain he is born again. So grain grows on the stalk, right? Sits in the sun for a bit. Then autumn comes this time of year. Grain falls, dies, goes into the ground, but then comes back next year. So basically reincarnation. Nice little metaphor for reincarnation. A Brahmin guest enters a house as the fire in all men. Right? He bring water, O Vaivashvata. That is how they appease him. So if a Brahmin comes, you have to serve him. Otherwise, he can curse you. Like the fire of the Brahmin. An angry Brahmin can curse you, as his father just cursed his own son. So there's lots of stories in the Mahabharata and the epics and the Puranas in Indian tradition in general of, because they perform a lot of tapas. They're not necessarily enlightened. They're just very powerful. And clearly, a lot of them have ego problems, and if you get them upset, they'll curse you. So obviously, an enlightened being wouldn't do that. So being a sage is not always synonymous with being enlightened. Anyway, so at least if the Brahmin comes to your house, offer some water at least. You have to give a little offering. Otherwise, it'd be like a fire; it could burn your house down. All right. So hopes and expectations, verse 8. Okay, Upanishad, Bali 1. Hopes and expectations. Fellowship and goodwill, children and livestock, rights and gifts. All these a Brahmin wrests from the foolish man in whose house he resides without any food. If a Brahmin comes to your house and you don't offer whatever you have, a little something to eat and some water, then all your good fortune will be taken away from you. Right? Fellowship, goodwill, children, livestock, you lose everything. In other words, bad luck, bad karma. Don't want to do that. Brahmin comes, at least offer him chapati, some water, something to eat. So death. So the point is, he's now gone to, the whole point is, right, so he's a Brahmin son, and he's gone to Death's house, because his father cursed him. So therefore, Death is going to think, okay, Brahmin's come to my house, I have to give him a gift. So that's the point of that previous verse, right? Because if a Brahmin comes to your house and you don't feed or do something nice, if you don't offer hospitality, then that's bad news. Then you'll lose all your good fortune. So Death says, 3 nights, O Brahmin, you stayed in my house, a guest worthy of homage, right, Brahmin, without any food. Ooh, that's a bad one. So he wants to make up for it. 3 wishes, therefore, deign to make in return. I'm sorry, 3 days you were here, for whatever reason, I'll give you 3 wishes. I didn't give you any food, but I'll give you 3 wishes. So homage to you, namaha, right? Namaste. That's where you get namaste. Look, this homage to you. If you could read the Sanskrit is Namaste, which of course now in Hindi becomes, it's really Namahate. Namahate becomes Namaste, so that means I do nam. Nam is to I offer respect to you, and of course that's just become the greeting in Hindi, just to say hello, Namaste, and goodbye, Namaste. But it's ancient, and here we find it right here, Namaste. Death is saying Namaste, O Brahmana, Brahman, Svasti me astu. Let auspicious suasti, svasti, svasti, suasti. Let there be good things for me. Right? Death seems a little afraid here. Even death himself seems to be a little concerned that he's neglected to look after the Brahman. So let there be good fortune to me, or the way he's translated it. May I fare well. So Nachiketas, 3 wishes now. He's got 3 wishes. That's not a bad deal. So 3 wishes. So first one, that with his temper cooled, his anger subdued, Gautama, O death, be to me well disposed. That he greet me with joy when by you I am dismissed. This is the first of my 3 wishes. So the first wish is, he said, okay, let my dad not be mad at me anymore. So somehow or other, I guess he's going to go back to his dad. So that's his first wish. Let you know, his dad got mad at him. So death, so that's not a bad wish. Death says he'll be affable in the future, just as before. Don't worry, he'll be nice, just as he was before. He didn't seem very nice to me, but anyway, he'll be affable in the future, just as before. Ordalaka Aruni, I have dismissed you. He'll have restful nights, his anger subdued, seeing you released from the jaws of death. You're saying your dad, maybe he's feeling a bit guilty now. Wouldn't you feel guilty if you cursed your son on the spur of the moment and he actually goes down to death? So he's having sleepless nights. It serves him right. So anyway, death says, "Yep, I'll give you your first wish. No worries. His anger will be subdued." Second wish, Nachiketas. In the world of heaven, the celestial world, right? Don't mix this up with Christian heaven, because Christian heaven is eternal. In these traditions, only liberation is eternal. Nirvana, moksha has different names. But the heaven, I don't translate it as heaven, svarga. I prefer to use the term celestial realm, so that people don't confuse that. If you use the term heaven, it might be confused with the Christian heaven. The celestial, and what's the difference? Well, one difference is the celestial realms are not eternal. You only go there for as long as your good karma lasts. The minute your good karma's over, back down you come. Okay? Law of karma. So Nachiketas, in the world of heaven, this celestial realm, there's no fear. There, no one has fear. There, one has no fear of old age or you. The immortals, although they do actually die, they live so long. Their lifespans are so inconceivably long compared to human lifespans that they don't fear death, because it just seems like it's just almost like eternity, but it's not. So therefore, there's no fear. It's just like when you're young, even right, at your age, maybe some of you students, you don't think of death when you're 20 or a teenager. So you don't fear it because you think, oh, I got such a long life ahead. My age, of course, you with white hair, there's no way you could avoid thinking about it. So, of course, anyway, so let's keep going. So in the world of heaven, there's no fear. There, one has no fear of old age. There's no old age. There is eventually death, but there's no old age. That's one of the perks of being a celestial. Your bodies are made of finer kind of matter, and they can enjoy a far wider range of sense experiences. Have all the mystic powers, so it's a pretty cool place. But it's a material place. The Atman is still trapped in a body, but that's trapped in a body made of very, very good karma, and so therefore able to experience incredible joys. So there's no fear up there. So transcending both of these, both hunger and thirst, beyond all sorrows, one rejoices in heaven, right? No one's hungry up there, no one's thirsty. You don't have to work, you don't have to plow the fields. The trees all provide amazing fruits. I mean, just food, just nature provides all these amazing things to eat, and so on. So that's these celestial realms. And actually in Indian Puranic traditions and in the legends of India, this world, has four ages. just like the Greeks had the gold and silver and the Bronze Ages, so there were 4 ages. And then this is the fourth, by the way, the worst one from the spiritual point of view. It might be the most advanced materially from a technological point of view, but according to at least from the ancient Indian point of view, we're in the fourth age, the worst, from the point of view of being connected to higher truths like the Atman. But in the first stage, it was like that. There was no agriculture, not because people were primitive, but because there was no need for agriculture, because the earth, was good karma. So there's, the ages in this world, there are 4 ages, and if you have really good karma, you're born in the first, and then, a little bit less good, the second, third, and fourth, right? So there's that, that way that karma gets expressed in terms of different kinds of forms, but then there are also, over and above this world, with its 4 ages, over and above that, there are all kinds of celestial realms and infernal realms. If you have really, 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 really bad karma, I mean, think of Genghis Khan or Adolf Hitler or Alexander the Great, by the way. We always think he's great because he's Western, but he was a butcher. I mean, we think of Genghis Khan as a butcher, and certainly Adolf Hitler, but Alexander slaughtered his way across Central Asia, slaughtered his way into India, northwest India, slaughtered masses of Brahmins that dared to sort of resist him. He was a butcher, as good as anyone else, any other so-called world conqueror. But anyway, so let's say you have really bad karma like that, then there are special realms, hellish realms, where you can burn up your karma in forms that can experience enormous amounts of pain. Our human forms, we can't experience that much pleasure, right? How many chapatis can you eat? Or, how many nice, how much of a feast do you get sick after a while? But also we can't experience a lot of pain. We lose consciousness. So therefore we're sort of in the middle. But there are hellish, but they're not eternal. Anyway, so this is all part of the cosmography of karma in Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. So anyway, so one way of getting to the celestial realm is if you do your Vedic rituals. I think we mentioned that a few times. Vedic ritual not only perpetuates the universe in terms of the here and now, but also if you do your Vedic rites, you get to go to the celestial realms. So, in that world, so we're verse 12, there's no fear. No one has, okay, we read all of that. Verse 13, you, O death, are studying the fire altar that leads to heaven. There's a particular Vedic rite. Fire altar would be a Vedic, there's lots of different Vedic rites, not just one. There were all kinds of Vedic rites. If you wanted progeny, if you were king and you wanted victory, then there were the daily ones that perpetuated, and they were standard and regulated and streamlined. But there are also specific ones, karma ones. According to a particular desire, you did a particular ritual to fulfill that desire. So here's one. So you, O death, are studying the fire altar that leads to heaven. It's called the Upaniṣads. Explain that to me, a man who has faith. People who are in heaven enjoy the immortal state. It is this I choose with my second wish. First wish, let my dad not be mad at me when I go back. Second, hey, let me go to the celestial realm. Sounds like it's good up there. That's my second wish. Death, no problem. I shall explain it to you, right? Tell me the ritual that will get me there. The fire sacrifice, the Vedic sacrifice. I shall explain to you, and heed this teaching of mine, O Nachiketas, you who understand. The fire altar that leads to heaven, to the attainment of an endless world, right? Immortal, or not quite immortal. They call them the immortals. That's being slightly rhetorical, just seems to be immortal from the point of view of our frame of reference. Just like, there's mosquitoes and gnats, I believe, that only live a few hours. So if they were able to understand how long humans live, they'd probably think we were immortals. From their frame of reference, if you only lived a few hours and you met someone who lived, 90 years, so think of how many hours that is. It'd probably, a whole bunch of zeros. You might as well say that's immortal, but it's technically not. So the celestials are not immortal, even as they're actually even called amara. Those who more mortal, another cognate, Indo-European. They don't die, but they do. So, I shall explain to you and heed this teaching, okay? The fire altar that leads to heaven, to the attainment of an endless world, and as its very foundation, know that it lies hidden in the cave of the heart. So he's not going to here we have, it's not necessarily an external ritual, but maybe the Upanishads are much more about meditation. So they tend to interiorize the Vedic rituals. You see a lot of this. In the older texts, it's clearly a Vedic ritual like it was anywhere in the ancient world. Fire, things are thrown into the fire, offerings to God. The Upanishads, they don't reject that, but you get these discourses like this, which sort of start speaking about interiorizing or internalizing the Vedic rite. So he described to him that fire altar. This is the narrator speaking. Beginning of the world. What type of bricks, right? Every ritual has to have a specific certain kind of brick. How many bricks? What order they're laid out. Very, very technical. The technology of the Vedic yajna. The yajna is the word for the fire altar, fire sacrifice. So he's described to him that fire altar, the beginning of the world, right? Because it perpetuates the world, the yajna. What type of bricks, how many, and how they're to be laid. Different sacrifices, you lay them. Some are shaped like a falcon. Some are shaped like a tortoise, I think, as I recall. Anyway, different shapes, depending on what the rite was, kind of what you wanted, what was the goal, the artha. So what type of bricks, how many, how they're held, and he repeated it exactly as described. So delighted at him, then, so in other words, this is Nachiketas. He learns it from Death, and now he repeats it back to him. So he's an excellent student. He repeats back exactly what he had been taught. Delighted at him then, right? A teacher's delighted if a student is really sincere and really interested and retains the information. That's the joy for a teacher. For a teacher, you give your life to teaching, and occasionally you get these remarkable students. That gives you joy in your heart, because you want to see the traditions perpetuated. You want to see, you love the tradition. You've dedicated your life, right, to teaching whatever it is that you find meaningful and you feel is useful to the world, and you dedicate your life to that. And you want people to appreciate it, and if someone comes forward and absorbs it and embodies it and puts it to practice and then perpetuates it, then you know that the traditions will continue, and that makes you very happy. So then delighted at him, then Death said to him again, well pleased, the large-hearted one said to him, he's generous, right? Remember, he's only had 2 wishes. Here, I grant you another wish today. This fire altar will bear your very name. Take also this glittering disc of gold. So in fact, there is a Vedic sacrifice called Nachiketas fire sacrifice. So the older texts do talk about a Nachiketas yajna. Yajna is the fire sacrifice. So this story probably is an explanation of how that name came to be, or is a narrative connecting, the origin of that name to that sacrifice. So this is a 3 Nachiketa man. This is the kind of thing that scholars are not sure what does that mean. Does it mean the three fires? Because there are 3 fires. I think if you look in Hamilton, in the beginning, shows a picture of the 3 fires. There's a circular one, the semicircular one, the square one that you actually put the offerings in. So that may be the 3 Nachiketa man. Okay, so some of these references we have to sort of guess at what they mean. This is the 3 Nachiketa man, uniting with the 3, performing the triple rite. He crosses over birth and death, perceiving the Brahman that is being born as the God who is to be adored. So this is not Brahman as that the Vedantins are interested in, but more this seems to be references to the Vedic sacrifice. Okay, you cross over birth and death because you become a celestial. Recognizing this disc of gold to be that, he attains unending peace. Scholars are not entirely clear what this all means. What is this disc of gold? They don't, as far as I know, there's not other references to this disc of gold, so it's a little bit of an anomaly. But anyway, that doesn't concern us. We're not, obviously, this is just the background story. It's just the frame story. So he goes on like that. Okay, this is a 3 Nachiketas man. He shoves aside the fetters of death before him. We're on verse 18, halfway through. Passes beyond sorrow and rejoices in heaven. So none of this is liberation. This is just getting to the celestial realm. This Nachiketas is verse 19, is your fire that leads to heaven, which you choose with your second wish. People will proclaim this your very own fire, okay? Because he's given the name to this sacrifice, so that means, and it's true, that the Nachiketas fire sacrifice survived, and is five in the sense that it was recorded in the text as a particular kind of fire sacrifice, presumably one that gets you to the celestial realm. Now, choose your third wish. Okay, so all of that is just a frame story. We might be wondering, what's this got to do with the Atman? Well, now we get to what Vedanta is going to be interested in. Nachiketas. Here's his question. There is this doubt about a man who is dead. He exists, say some. Others, he exists not. Right? Just like in our day and age, right? Some say believe in a soul and life after death, and some say no, just death is it. As we die, we're just matter, and then matter decomposes. Okay, so in any period of human history, there's always going to be materialists and spiritualists, or whatever you want to call them. He exists, say some. Others, he exists not. I want to know this, so please teach me. This is the third of my three wishes. Now he wants to know, does something survive death? Who doesn't want to know that? Death. His response, he doesn't like this question. As to this, even the gods of old had doubts, for it's hard to understand. It's a subtle doctrine. Make Nachiketas another wish. Do not press me. Release me from this. Again, he's testing the student. So we have this idea of the teacher testing. So he's saying, even the gods don't know that, even the celestials, right? But choose another wish. Nachiketas. As to this, we're told, even the gods had doubts, and you say, O death, it's hard to understand, but another like you I can't find to explain it. There's no other wish that is equal to it. He says, look, dear death, you if anybody knows what happens after death, it's death. So who's in a better place to explain this to me than you? So I can't find anyone better than you, so he's calling his bluff. He's saying, there's no other wish I want. This is it. This is my third wish. Death, still not ready to give up trying to dissuade him. Choose sons and grandsons who'll live 100 years. Plenty of livestock and elephants, horses and gold. This is, back in Vedic India, or anywhere in the world, this is wealth, right? Wealth is your cattle and elephants. You have to be really wealthy to maintain an elephant. Any idea how much an elephant eats? To support an elephant, you have to be wealthy. Horses and gold. Choose as your domain a wide expanse of earth. I'll give you a kingdom. And you yourself, live as many autumns as you want. You can live as long as you want. Give you autumns meaning years, right? And if you would think this is an equal wish, you may choose wealth together with a long life. Achieve prominence, Nachiketas. I'll even give you fame in this wide world, and I will make you enjoy your desires at will. I'll give you the best the material world can offer. You may ask freely for all those desires, hard to obtain in this mortal world. It's hard to get an elephant, isn't it? And so forth. Hard to obtain. Look at these lovely girls with chariots and lutes. Girls of this sort are unobtainable by men. My apologies to the ladies. I'll give them to you. You'll have them wait on you. But about death, don't ask me, Nachiketas. Give you anything else you want. Nachiketas. Since the passing days of a mortal of death sap here the energy of all the senses, right? We just get old and our senses get weak. And even a full life is but a trifle. Even if you live 100 years, it's a trifle. When you get to my age, you realize, oh my goodness, where did life go? Most of you think you're going to live forever. That's the illusion of youth. But even a full life is but a trifle. So keep your horses, your songs and dances. I don't want them. Keep your petty little boons you're trying to tempt me with. You're trying to bribe me with. I want knowledge. With wealth, you cannot make a man content. Will we get to keep wealth when we've seen you? When you come at the end and take us away, can we take our wealth with you? Death? And we get to live only as long as you will allow. So this alone is the wish that I'd like to choose. Right? Digs in. This is it. What mortal man with insight, someone that's insightful, is paying attention, that recognizes the superficiality of chasing ephemeral things, that's insight, recognizing that, there must be a truth. Well, I should use my life to seek truth. That person with insight, seeing inside, seeing what is consciousness, what is the life force, let me seek that. Let me seek who I really am in the deepest level. So what mortal man with insight, who has met those that do not die or grow old? This may be a reference to, like the yogis, the saints, that, they don't die or grow old in the sense that they realize the Atman, and the Atman doesn't die or grow old. So you could read it that way. So what mortal man who's met, real yogis, himself growing old in this wretched and lowly place. This world is wretched because it's full of inconvenience and suffering, and our pleasurable moments are kind of temporary, and we have to work so hard, even just to enjoy a little bit. So, what mortal man with insight who has met those? Okay, I've read that. Growing old in this wretched and lowly place, looking at its beauties, its pleasures and joys, would delight in a long life. Okay, so there's beauty, there's pleasures and joys, but still, that doesn't give us the deep pleasure, the deep bliss. That doesn't give us the deep level satisfaction that we all crave. The point on which they have great doubts, right? These conversations, is there life after death? Is there not? That point. What happens at that great transit? I love this phrase. This great transit. Let me see if I can get the Sanskrit. It is Yat Samparaye Mahati. That great transit. What happens at that great transit, right? When we die, when we leave this realm, this world, and go somewhere else. That's what a transit is. You go from one place to another. So he's assuming that something, Nachiketa's, the way he's framing that, is assuming that there is something that survives death. So the point on which they have great doubts, these philosophers, some are materialists, some are spiritualists, what happens at that great transit? Tell me that, O death. This is my wish. Probing the mystery deep. Nachiketa's wishes for nothing other than that. Period. That's it. Now death realizes, okay, you can't take your word back. He promises 3 wishes. Death realizes that this kid is for real. This kid is not backing out, and now he's ready to teach him. In other words, he's proved himself to be a sincere student. And then we have these, and these teachings are now much more accessible than the early Brihad and the Chandogya. Here we clearly have teachings that are correlatable with what the Gita teaches and later Hinduism teaches. So we'll look at some of these verses. The good is one thing, the gratifying is quite another. The goals are different. Both bind a man. So even if you do good, it still binds you. Right? You have to give up desire to be free of bondage. And that's going to become a major theme. Right? So just doing good, but if you're still thinking your body-mind, if you're still ignorant of the Atman, but you do good in the world, well, fine. But then you make good karma, and then you go to the celestial realm, but it still binds you. So the good is one thing, the gratifying is quite another. The goals are different, both bind a man. Good things await him who pick the good, and by choosing the gratifying, one misses one's goal. If we're just seek the gratifying, like we're seeking just temporary sensations. We just want experiences, sense experience. We want to eat good things, hear good music, and if we spend our whole life like that, we miss the mark, meaning we miss the whole point of life. Both the good and the gratifying present themselves to a man. The wise assess them, note their difference, and choose the good over the gratifying. But the fool chooses the gratifying rather than what is beneficial. The fool just interested in the immediate present and immediate sense gratification. No thought about, are there consequences? Might there be a law of karma? Might everything I do have a reaction? Just like all known reality is governed by cause and effect. Might that also be the case for human behavior? So that's foolish from the point of view of the Kaṭha. You have looked at and rejected, Nachiketas, things people desire. What do most people desire? Love, all the elephants, cow. Well, back then anyway. Nowadays you'd have to put in, I don't know, Mercedes-Benz or whatever it is, a yacht, whatever it is people desire. You've looked at and rejected, Nachiketas, things people desire. Lovely and lovely to look at, right? Who doesn't want to look at lovely things? This disc of gold, where many a man found us. People die to get a disc of gold like this. You have not accepted as a thing of wealth. You realize this is kind of what kind of wealth is this? Far and part. Okay, 1 second. Well, let's see how far we get, and then I don't want to make this lecture too long. And this is a pretty, this Upanishad. These are later Upanishads. Remember what we said before. The language is a little bit later. It's not so archaic and old. and also the content is more accessible. So I'm less concerned about you not understanding this. I think you could probably make sense of a lot, not all, but a lot of these verses yourself. So we'll read what we can. We'll go on for another a bit, and then we will and see. We'll keep an eye on the clock there. So verse 4 in this volley 2 of the Kaṭha. Far apart and widely different are these two, the good and the gratifying. Ignorance and what's known as knowledge. Sorry, these two. These two are far apart. Ignorance and what's known as knowledge. I take Nachiketas as one yearning for knowledge. The many desires do not confound you. We are confounded by our desires, my friends. Right? With all these desires, with school and exams and girlfriends and boyfriends and making money and all these desires overwhelming our mind. We can't think of anything else. So to get clarity, to seek knowledge in the Indian traditions, we have to get through those desires. Well, not get through them, but actually brush them aside. And then once the desires are not clogging up and agitating the mind, and the mind attains a state of calm and peacefulness and insightfulness, it's going to be called sattva. We had that remember the introduction to Sankhya sattva. In Indian philosophy, it's not just about intellectual acumen and rigor, but the ability to perceive clearly and therefore analytically and insightfully comes from a clear mind. So therefore there's much more emphasis in what you'll see in the Indian traditions on meditation and practices that are not there in Western philosophy. It doesn't matter if you have practices or don't, or what your lifestyle is, or if you're a good person. You could be a complete rascal and be a great philosopher in the Western tradition. Not so in India. If you're a rascal and you're agitated, then your mind is. You might come up with brilliant things, but it's not that those things are not going to have any bearing on truth. They might be profound. There might be intellect. Okay, I just spoke for I have no idea how long, but it probably 10 minutes at least, and I thought it was recording, and it wasn't, and I have no idea where I left off. I just gave a whole discussion about science and the Atman and consciousness and neurological science, and probably that wasn't recorded, but I don't know how far back I need to go. So there's going to be a disruption here. Please forgive me. I have no idea why it stopped recording. So let's go back to 7. Well, let's go back to 8. I don't know where to go, how far back to go, but we're in the Kaṭha Upanishad, Volley 2, verse 8. Though one may think a lot, it's difficult to grasp. You can't grasp it with thought. Right? Thought has produced. Look at Indian thought. How many different ways of looking at reality and the self? Momentariness, interdependence of Buddhism, the eternal Atman. And look at Western thought. Look at any thought. It's infinite. The array of possibilities that the intellect can come up with and defend very coherently and very convincingly. You speak to a Madhyamika Buddhist, you'll be convinced. If a person is intellectually powerful, if you speak to a Yogachar Buddhist, you'd be very convinced. You speak to a Vedantin, a Dvaita Vedanta, very convincing, or a theistic Vedanta, very convincing. Nyayika's formidable. Debaters and intellectuals. So the intellect can pretty much defend almost anything. So therefore, one may think a lot, says verse 8. Although that's the case, it's difficult to grasp when it's taught by an inferior man, someone that hasn't realized the truths. Yet one cannot gain access to it unless someone else teaches it. The knowledge has to come from the outside. Right? The mind itself can only produce concepts and philosophies and worldviews from the ingredients that are within the mind. And those ingredients from yoga psychology are imprints of empirically perceived things that have been perceived now and in the past. Things heard about, read, all of that. So we read all this stuff, we see the world, we perceive. And when we reflect, we're reflecting on these sense impressions. And then we're trying to make sense of them, and then we put them together, and then we put whatever it is that we've seen and perceived and heard about, we contemplate it, and then we put it together into some interesting package, and we come out with an interesting point of view, or a new philosophy, or a new way of thinking about science. But the point is, knowledge is the product of sense perception. It's the product, because the mind registers sense imprints. But the Atman is beyond the senses. So there's no imprint in the mind for the Atman. So therefore, so how are we going to know about it? It has to come from beyond. That's the whole point of revelation. And that's what the Upanishads are. They're presenting themselves as a source of information, presenting information from beyond. That's why they're eternal. For the theists, they're spoken by God. Okay? So one can't grasp this notion by argumentation, yet it's easy to grasp when taught by another. Teachings are straightforward, actually. You're the Atman. And reincarnation makes a lot of sense. It's not a belief. It's a principle of cause and effect, which is actually an empirical principle. Everything we perceive is governed by cause and effect. So why not human behavior? So that's not so much a belief as an inference. So you're truly steadfast, dear boy. Verse 9. Did we finish verse 8? The last two lines. It's smaller than the size of an atom, a thing beyond the realm of reason. It's infinitesimally small, and reason can't grasp it. Reason can know about it, can infer it must exist. You can infer, look, I've failed to find consciousness in any known material entity. I've looked at neurons, I've looked at protons, I've broken up the atom, I've combined neurons, and we have not been able to produce life in any known material way. So therefore it must be life must, the cause, the substance from within, the substance of which life, consciousness is a quality, must be non-material. You can make an inference like that, and I wouldn't be surprised if science eventually will come to that position. Pendulum will swing. I don't know. I gave a whole discourse on science and religion. I have no idea if it's, because I can't stop this and rewind and see what I said, because if I stop it, the whole lecture stops. So that's the problem I have. I don't know how much. I don't know when this thing stopped recording, so I don't know whether I already said all this or I didn't say it or the whole chunk's missing. But not to worry. We'll do the best we can. We'll keep going. So it's a thing beyond the realm of reason. End of verse 8. 9. One can't grasp this notion by argumentation. You can't debate. Buddhists and Nyayikas debated for millennia. Vedanta still debate. Did anybody win? They didn't win. They just, the schools debated, and then maybe the Buddhists got the better of a particular debate. Then the Nyayikas went back and they conferred, and then they figured out, okay, how do we respond to that next time? And then next time, maybe it switched over, and the Nyayikas won. So really, it's not so much the truth of the philosophy, but the power of the intellect of the debater. Because a really powerful intellectual could probably win with any point of view, and that's what you do in debate school, isn't it? You just sort of, you take on different sides and you flip and take on the other side. So it's that. So therefore, it's not the actual content that's absolute. It's the prowess of the debater. So that's the already in the Upanishads that was recognized, right? You can't grasp this notion by argumentation. You can make a convincing case for momentariness. You can make a convincing case for an autonomous Atman. You can make a convincing case for Advaita Vedanta. You can make a convincing case for God and independent soul. All of these are convincing that these schools still survive after centuries, millennia. Yet it's easy to grasp when taught by another. You're truly steadfast, dear boy. You've grasped it. Would that we have Nachiketas, one like you, to question us. Okay? Nachiketas, what you call a treasure, I know to be transient. These material things. He says, he's wise. They're transient. For by fleeting things one cannot gain the perennial. These temporary material things, all material things are temporary. You can't get the eternal. Perennial is eternal. Next verse, death. Satisfying desire is the foundation of the world, because the foundation of the world is the Vedic rites, remember, and the Vedic rites are performed to satisfy desire, one of which being, the continuation of the universe. Uninterrupted rites bring ultimate security. Right? You get ultimate security, the world, the universe keeps chugging along, and then you get to the celestial realm next life. So great and widespread praise is the foundation. The praise is the Vedic hymns. Foundation of the sacrifice is the hymns chanted during the sacrifice. These you have seen, wise Nachiketas, and having seen, firmly rejected. The primeval one who is hard to perceive, the Atman, wrapped in mystery, hidden in the cave of the heart, residing within the impenetrable depth. You can't see it with the eyes or the mind. Regarding him as a god, not that the God's up there, but he's the real God in a metaphoric sense. An insight gained by inner contemplation can realize the Atman through inner contemplation. Both sorrow and joy the wise abandon. The wise are no longer looking for happiness, sadness, these fleeting states of mind. Normally we seek desires. If we gain them, we're happy. If we don't gain them, we're sad. So wise give up both, not just sorrow, but joy as well. Let's jump down to 15. Here we have Om. We're going to have a whole Upanishad dedicated to Om. But let's have a look at this one. The word that all the Vedas disclose, the word that all austerities proclaim, seeking which people live the student lives, the brahmacharis, celibate lives. Remember the first 25 years of life. That word now I will tell you in brief, it is Om. So in the Upanishads, we get the correlation of Om with Brahman. We're going to get explicit. So Om somehow is sonic Brahman. For this alone is the syllable that's Brahman. There it is. For this alone is the syllable that's supreme. When indeed one knows this syllable, he obtains his every wish. Okay? Or is Atman in that sense. Is Brahman. Okay. Now, jump down. We're going to jump a little bit. 18. The wise one. This is the exact same verse we find in the Bhagavad Gita. When we get to the Gita, I'll say, this is in the Kaṭha. Verbatim. The wise one, he is not born, he does not die, the Atman. He has not come from anywhere. He has not become anyone. He is unborn, eternal, primeval, everlasting. He is not killed when the body is killed, the Atman. Jump. 20. Finer than the finest, larger than the largest, is the self, the Atman that lies here in the heart of a living being. The Atman. That's what life is. It comes from, call it a soul if you want, but it's consciousness. Without desires, free from sorrow, a man perceives by the Creator's grace, it sounds like God in there, the grandeur of the self. Yoga Sutras, Patanjali is going to say, you can perceive your Atman by the grace of God, that there is a God, separate from the Atman. But God can give us, God. The Gita says that, Patanjali says that, many Indian traditions says it, and here is a very, very early expression of that point of view. 23. The self cannot be grasped by teachings or by intelligence, or even by great learning. You can be a great learned person. It doesn't mean you know the Atman. Only the man he chooses can grasp him, whose body the self chooses as his own. For whom? Go down to 25. The Brahman and the Kshatriya are both like a dish of boiled rice. Death consumes everybody. Whether you're Brahmin, the high caste Brahmin, or the Kshatriya warrior, death is like the sprinkled sauce. Who truly knows where he is? Okay, so we'll just skip around, and you should read all this yourselves, because we don't have time to read the whole Upanishad, but it's fairly straightforward. And don't worry if there's sort of complicated bits about sacrifices. 3. Know the self as a rider in a chariot. Okay, so now we're verse 3 in Vali 3, verse 3. The self is a rider in the chariot. The body is a chariot. Okay, he's going to give a metaphor. Body is like a chariot. The intellect is the charioteer, driving the chariot, but the self is just the passenger. He's not driving it. The intellect is. The mind are the reins. The senses are the horses. Verse 4. Sense objects are the paths around them. He who is linked, yukta. It's going to be a big word in the Gita, yukta. You control mind. Intelligence controls the mind, controls the horses. Then you get to journey's end. If the mind is out of control, desires are all over the place, the intellect is servant to the mind is, and the senses, the horses are running all over the way, disaster. He who is linked to the body, Atman, senses and mind, the wise proclaim as the one who enjoys. If you control, you become satisfied by controlling the mind, not by being controlled by the mind with all its desires, its insatiable desires. When a man lacks understanding about the ultimate goals of life, the Atman, and his mind is never controlled, right? All desires come from all over the place and running around trying to fulfill this one, that one, this one, that one. No control. His senses do not obey him, as bad horses a charioteer. A person may think he's free, but really he's not free. He's a servant of the desires, a slave of the desires. Okay, so therefore, just like bad horses, they're not obeying the reins of the charioteer. But when a man is understanding and his mind is ever controlled, his senses do obey him, as good horses a charioteer. When a man lacks understanding of the Atman, is unmindful, always impure, always chasing selfish things, he does not reach the final step, the highest goal of life, from which he is not reborn again. That's Brahman. But gets on the round of rebirth, and it gets repeated again. Verse 8. And from which he is not reborn again. All right, so then you continues the metaphor of the chariot. You can read that yourselves. Because it gets a little complicated, and well, not complicated, but we need a few minutes to unpack that. Let's just go to 7:12 for now. Hidden in all the beings, this self is not visibly displayed. Yet people of keen vision see him. The yogis can perceive the Atman through yogic practice. We'll get to that in the Yoga Sutras. With eminent and sharp minds. Verse 15, we're jumping a little bit, just jump down 2. It has no sound or touch, no appearance, taste or smell. It is without beginning or end, undecaying and eternal. When a man perceives it fixed and beyond the immense, he is freed from the jaws of death. You can perceive the Atman. The wise man who hears or tells the tale of Nachiketas, an ancient tale told by death, will rejoice in Brahman's world. So the wise man who hears or tells it, we just told it and heard it. So according to this, we're going to rejoice in Brahman's world. Let's hope for the best. But that's verse 16. If a man, pure and devout, proclaims this great secret in a gathering of Brahmins, or during a meal for the dead, it will lead him to eternal life. So let's see, maybe if you're invited to a funeral ever, which is the meal for the dead, then you might consider, and if you're invited to say something, according to this verse, if you repeat this story, you'll get eternal life. It might be worth a try. It's also a lovely story to actually share at a funeral, because it's nice to. What else do you say? Someone's died. What else can you say? At least you can read narratives that, about the possibility of the soul being eternal. They're somewhat reassuring. What else are you going to say, other than just superficial things? Okay, so let's see what else Let's read a few more verses. We'll go to chapter 4, Vali 4. And the first verse, the self-existent one, the Atman, pierced the apertures outward. What are the apertures? The eyes. It's, the way that consciousness leaves the body through the ears, the nose, the eyes, the tongue. Pierce the apertures outward. Therefore one looks out and not into oneself. A certain wise man in search of immortality turned his sight inward and saw the self within. So most of us, our consciousness is pouring out through the apertures, the gates of the body, the eyes, the ears. We're interested in sensual experience, but a wise person, understanding that these are ephemeral, they're temporary, they're never satisfying, turns sight within. Fools, verse 2, chapter 4, Vali 4, pursue outward desires and enter the trap of death spread wide. Because if you pursue desires, then all of your actions plant a seed and you get the reaction, and that's the trap of death. But the wise know what constitutes the immortal, and in unstable things here do not seek the stable. We're looking for the eternal. Sense experiences are unstable. They don't last, they come and go. They're unstable, they're fickle, they're temporary. So that's some nice verses then. And so let's go. Now here's one verse that is going to be very interesting to Shankara. In chapter 4, Vali 4, I've been calling it Vali, by the way, and I'm now using this messed up, very old, well-used Upanishad, and I see that he's calling it chapter. It doesn't matter, Vali. We're still in chapter 4, and I think the page number here is 242. Shankara's going to find verse 11, very interesting. With your mind alone you must understanding. There is here no diversity at all. From death to death he goes who sees here any kind of diversity. Remember, for Shankara, there is no world, it's a mirage. But the Upanishads never said that. Nowhere in the Upanishads does it say the world is not real, it's a mirage. But this is the closest it gets. Yeah, you can see how Shankara would feel this supports his position. With your mind alone, okay, there is no diversity at all. Of course, other philosophers are going to say, well, there's no diversity, it's all ultimately Brahman. But that doesn't mean it's unreal, it's just that it's ultimately Brahman. But for Shankara, he's going to take that and apply that to his notion that the world is a mirage. Okay? So go down to chapter 5, we'll just jump around, a couple more. First verse, the unborn one. And you can guess now who we're talking about, all right? At this point, you should be more informed consumers and be able to sort of navigate the Upanishads a little bit on your own. So the unborn one, clearly the Atman. Free of crooked thoughts. The thoughts are in the mind, desires, all of this. Has a fort with 11 gates. Okay, the body's a fort. You go in and out of the fort through the gates. What are the gates? 11, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, mouth, anus, genital. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Where are the other 2? 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, mouth, the genital, the anus. Where does it say 11? It should be 9 gates. Elsewhere it says 9 gates. Anyway, we'll if anyone has an insight into that. Let me see if there's a footnote on that. So remember, there's footnotes here. I'm not sure if they're in resources. If you want them to be put there, send me an email. I'll have to get them Xerox. I don't know how I'll do that. But anyway, if you're seeking a particular footnote, just email myself or the TA. But the fort with 11 gates. So we got this is the footnote, page 380. 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, mouth, anus, urinal opening. Okay, well, those are the 9. Elsewhere it says 9, and that would be the 9, right? The navel and the cranial opening. So, those are the other 2. The navel. Is there an opening there? Yeah, I suppose it is, right? But somewhere there was an opening there, and the cranial opening. Anyway, elsewhere it does say 9. It doesn't matter. So it's a fort. It's a metaphor. It doesn't matter how many. It's a nice metaphor for the body. So the unborn one, free of crooked thoughts, has a fort with 11 gates. One who attends to it, to the Atman, instead of just the things of the world, will not grieve. If we fixate on the things of the world, we'll always grieve. Why will we always grieve? Because we'll lose those things sooner or later. Even our own body, we'll lose it. We'll get old. So we'll grieve. We'll grieve, oh, I'm getting old. Oh, I lost my money. Oh, my kids left home. They don't write. Oh, my partner left me. We'll be grieved at some point. Or, even if all goes well, you're going to die. So then we grieve then. So one who attends to it will not grieve. That we can never lose, because that's who we are. But freed from it, he will be set free. So let's go over to verse number 6. And here we have another early expression of reincarnation. Come, I'll tell you the secret and eternal formulation of Brahman. And what happens to the Atman, Gautama, when it encounters death? Some enter a womb, by which an embodied self obtains a body. Others pass into a stationary thing, like a tree, according to what they have done. Action, reaction. According to what they have learned. This person, creating every desire, who lies awake within those who sleep, that alone is the pure. That is Brahman. Right? Consciousness is still awake when we sleep. We're still conscious, except the consciousness is absorbed in the mind, in the state of denseness. Consciousness that does not go to sleep. So it lies awake within those that sleep. That alone is the pure. That is Brahman. That alone is the immortal. On it all the worlds rest. Beyond it no one can ever pass. That's who we are. That's what sustains the entire universe. Okay, so we'll finish up with now an early reference to yoga, because we'll be reading the Yoga Sutras, and yoga happens to be, something I've translated the whole Yoga Sutras and wrote a big commentary, something I know little something about. So here's one of the earliest references to yoga as practice. Okay, so remember this. When we get to yoga, I'll say, remember the passage in the Kaṭha Upanishads. So we're in chapter 6, and we're looking at verse 10 and 11. When the five perceptions are stilled, okay, the five perceptions, the senses are closed down. This is going to be called pratyahara in yoga, together with the mind. Patanjali is going to define yoga, the second sutra, the Yoga Sutras, the text we read later in the semester. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the stilling of the mind. So when the five, right? So when the five perceptions are stilled, senses are closed down, along with the mind. And not even reason bestirs itself. No mental activity. When the mind is still, then consciousness can exist in its own nature, rather than being filtered through the mental, sensual instruments that it is equipped with. That's the goal. To have and that's the Atman. The goal is to have an experience of pure consciousness, freed from thought, freed from reason, freed from sensual perception. So that not even reason bestirs itself. Complete nirodha, stillness. They call it the highest state. They, the yogis. When senses are firmly reined in, that is yoga. So people think. This is the first reference to yoga as practice. And not philosophy. Yoga as practice. Philosophy contemplates the truth, analyzes and engages in critical discussion about whether there's a soul, whether there's not a soul. You can do all of that, but it's not going to experience it that way. Right? Philosophy cannot cause one, cannot provide one the means to experience the Atman. At best, it can establish, that there is an Atman. So, but is there a way of experiencing it? Yoga, right? That is yoga, so people think. From distractions, a man is then free. What is distraction? Mental activity, sensual, the world out there, distractions all over the places, right? All over the place. So free of all of that. Then what remains? Pure consciousness. Why should one seek that? Because it's blissful. And, we missed that. And there was a couple of passages from the Brihads speaking of the bliss of Brahman, that it's trillions of times greater than any bliss. And the Taittiriya Upanishad is a passage like that. Greater than any bliss known to us. And this, what we call bliss or pleasure, is just momentary. It's never deeply satisfying. It's always complicated. There's always a price tag. There's always a morning after. There's always a price to pay. And even if none of that's the case, it's temporary. No one can deny that. So from distractions, a man is then free. The distractions of the world, external world and internal world of the mind. For yoga is the coming into being as well as the ceasing to be. What's coming into being? Consciousness comes into being into its own nature rather than being caught up in external things external to itself, including the mind. The mind seems internal. Compared to the world, it's internal, but compared to the Atman, even the mind is external. It's external to the Atman. So yoga is the coming into being of the Atman, as well as the ceasing to be. What ceases to be? All the distractions of the world. So when the distractions of the world cease to be, then consciousness can come into being in its own right. That's self-realization. That's the goal. Not by speech, not by the mind, nor by sight can he be grasped. How else can he be perceived other than by saying he is? Right? How else can we know the Atman? Can't see him. All you can say is it exists. It is. And the Sanskrit for that is astiti, astiti, asti. It is, iti. How else? Astiti bhruvato anyatra katam tad upalabhyate. How else can he be known other than by saying asti? It exists. Right? That's all the mind can do. Can't experience it. But it can be experienced. It can be experienced when the mind itself, the mind that's saying it is, still all of that, close out the world, and then consciousness has no further distractions. We've always been conscious. It's just our consciousness is always externalized. It's always absorbed in the realm of thought or the realm of the senses. So it's not that we haven't experienced consciousness, except we've never experienced it in its own grounding, in its own ground. We've experienced it only filtered through the mental and sensual realms. So, okay. So how else can I love that? Asti. Astiti bhruvato anyatra katam tad upalabhyate. Not by speech, not by the mind, not by sight can he be grasped, or verse 12 of Kaṭha, chapter 6. Well, we just read that. Jump to 14. When they're all banished, those desires lurking in one's heart. There's no question of having an experience of pure consciousness, as long as the desires are which distract and control consciousness. As long as consciousness is absorbed in these desires, which are in the mind, this external piece of equipment, then consciousness can never be absorbed in its own nature. So the desires are really what are distracting consciousness by cluttering up the mind. So when they're all banished, these desires lurking in one's heart, the heart is the mind, then a mortal becomes immortal and attains Brahman in this world. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras later in the semester is not going to be like you do yoga in your next life, you'll experience pure Brahman. No, in this world. Patanjali gives a set of practices through which he claims one can experience consciousness in this world. When the knots are all cut, what's a knot? The desires. What's a desire? It binds us. You have a desire for an object, you're now bound. You're knotted to that object. You want to buy a car or whatever it is, or you want a partner or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or something, right? You're now bound to that object. So when they're all banished, where are we? When the knots, that's a knot, are all cut, that bind one's heart on earth. We're bound to our desires. Desires are for earthly things, material things. Then a mortal becomes immortal, for such is the teaching, right? These are the Upanishads. This is what they're teaching us. And all of Hindu philosophy then is trying to, in different ways, direct us towards this entity, the Atman. Even Mimamsa, later Mimamsa, early Mimamsa, not so much liberation, but even early Mimamsa says, well, your Atman can go to the celestial realm, you're better off up there. Okay, so I think that let's go to the very last verse. Then, after Nachiketas, verse 18, receive this body of knowledge and the entire set of yogic rules taught by death. So this Upanishad is presenting itself as teaching yogic rules, even though the term yoga is only used in verse 11, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's the case. After he received these rules, he attained Brahman, he became free from aging and death. So will others who know this teaching about the self. That's what the Upanishad is claiming. And Vedanta then is the tradition coming out of the Upanishads that perpetuates these teachings into the modern day. We still have the Vedanta lineages very much alive and active in India, and keeping these teachings alive. And here we are in the course in 21st century New Jersey, engaging these same teachings. So I think the authors of the Upanishads hopefully will be pleased that we too are playing our little role in the continuation of these teachings. Okay, and I hope you enjoyed the Kaṭha. It's fabulous Upanishad. Have a good day.